Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good afternoon, my name is Karen, Brother Karen. I've been a Muslim for almost over 30 years now. I first learned about Islam as a young child, going to school, and I can only that those first impressions have lasted for a long time. They mainly revolved around two things. One was the heavyweight world boxing champion Cassius Clay, who changed his name to Muhammad Ali. And as a young 10-year-old, I had no idea on why he would like to change his name to Muhammad Ali. And that I suppose was my first knowledge of a religion called Islam. The next thing of international recognition probably was, again, when I was not much older, about 10 or 12 years old, watching on TV as 3 airliners that had been hijacked and taken to the Sinai Peninsula were blown up. And again, this raised further questions about what was this thing called Islam. And I had those questions until I was in my adulthood. And when I was in my late 20s, I worked in Singapore for 2 years. And across the road from where I was living was a mosque. And it was just convenient that the Adhan call for prayer, for Fajr prayers, was the time I was waking up to go to work, to get ready to go to work. So I had this alarm clock of the call to Adhan, and that sort of had me asking more questions about Islam, and these people were so dedicated to get up in the dark of night and go to their mosque to pray, which seemed totally alien to anything I'd experienced previously. It was while I was working in Singapore that I met my wife from Malaysia. She was Muslim. And through her, I was introduced to her family. We weren't married at that stage. But I'd never experienced anything like it previously. The welcome I got from my wife's family and the love that was shown by my wife's family, I could only accredit at that stage this thing called Islam. A special person that sort of really got me thinking about Islam was my late father-in-law, and he was a key person in my desire to become a Muslim, because at that stage I'd never met a person so pious, so welcoming, so loving, and he really didn't know me all that well, but I was just accepted into the family. So, to cut a long story short, when I proposed to my wife to get married, she says, "Oh, you're going to become a Muslim, have to convert to be a Muslim." But at that stage, I thought I had a good grounding in the religion, and that wasn't any concern at that stage to me, and I was quite happy to convert to Islam. Not that I was fully immersed in Islam and knew very much about it. Anyhow, we came back to Wellington, and I worked in Wellington, and we became friends with Malaysian students studying at Victoria University, and they were ever around at our house during their days of study. And through questions I was able to get more knowledge of Islam, and I always remember being given my first Quran. It was an English translation, obviously, but a visiting Malaysian student gave me my first Quran, and I actually still have that one, as I remember it quite well. But Islam at that stage in Wellington wasn't very widespread or entrenched in Wellington. They had there was a small mosque up in Newtown and a community in Newtown, but Islam hadn't spread throughout the community. It was then that I learnt of the Al Hijra Mosque, which was over in Bracken Street in Newlands, and of the Mosque for Friday prayers in Brandon Street in Wellington. When Al-Amin was started, and that's probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, Sheikh Khalid was a very prominent person, not only in Al-Amin, but in Al-Hijra. Mainly, and I got to know the Sheikh very well because I attended Arabic classes at the mosque. And that relationship with the Sheikh and with Al-Amin has grown ever since. To the extent that in 2019, my wife and myself went to Hajj in Mecca, and I realised that going to Hajj, obviously it's one of the pillars of Islam, going to Hajj, but it's I suppose you could say a confirmation of Islam, that you embody it in its entirety. I found Hajj a very rewarding experience, but trying at times. One of the things I'll never forget was when we were in Mina and looking out over the valley of Mina at this tented camp that held over 2.5 million people. And it was just a real overwhelming experience to think, here were all these people from all points of the globe, all statuses of life, here for one thing, to perform Hajj. And that at times was quite an overwhelming sense to me, and at that stage still quite foreign. But I enjoyed it. It was quite testing at times, but I'm very glad that I ended up doing it. Over the last few years, through the help and assistance of the people within Al-Amin, I've been able to learn quite a bit about Islam. But I suppose you are always learning, and there's never a point where you say you know everything. So I quite enjoy listening to the khutbah, like the one we've just had today on Friday, and you take those lessons, the lessons learnt from the khutbah, and put it into your working life. And I think one of the things that people, I quite often get asked the question from non-Muslims about what it's like to be a Muslim, to which my response generally is, it's not very different from normal life. And if you follow the Quran, you follow spiritual well-being, sociological well-being. So the Quran deals with many facets of life, and if you follow what the guidance that the Quran gives on those facets of life, it's amazing how serene and accomplished life can be. So that's basically the story of my, as I say, reverting to Islam, and I hope in years to come to learn a lot more and become a lot more knowledgeable and helpful within the Islamic community. Assalamu alaikum.